I'm David Worley, you're watching Atheist Edge.
All right, so we are joined here today by Mark Woolsey, who's a deacon in the Reformed Episcopal Church.
Very
Did I
good.
get all that right?
You got it right.
And so we just 5 minutes ago got done filming a video, which we'll link to in the description, about the book of Job and kind of a recasting of the characters and a retelling of that story. And so you were here to watch it. You got to see it in action. It's a little bit different from the one in the Bible.
Actually, yes and no.
Okay, well, what do you mean by that?
Well, for one thing, I think Jim actually did, made it kind of interesting. I think what he did was somewhat interesting. Obviously, I disagree with the interpretation of, Job and his relationship to God. But what I found particularly interesting is that he gives a real anti view of how it appears to us down here. It was profane, and that would be problematic, from my perspective. But okay, given that, that's this group. If you can just kind of set some of that aside for the moment and just hear what's being said otherwise, I think Jim is giving a pretty good perspective of what it feels like when you're under the thumb. That kind of stuff is I thought that was not as far off the mark as it could have been. I will make some comments where I think he clearly misunderstood something, but that the tenor of what Job was feeling, that's yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So what did you have in mind as far as where you think that maybe the Bible was trying to make a different point?
Well, it seems to me that there were at least two premises that that Jim, I think, fundamentally misunderstands in this. The first one of them is a more minor one, but a very, very important one actually, is that you created us broken. That was the phrase. And if you allow that, everything else he said was right. Mm-hmm. If that's the case, if God created us broken, everything he said was correct. Just put this out there. It's better than Scripture. Mm-hmm. Because you got it. You nailed it. He nailed it. God created us good. We were created perfect in the garden, we meaning Adam and Eve. We were created perfect in the garden. Sin is something that's added on. That's why in the Christian faith, sin is never original. You go read the Screwtape Letters, C.S. Lewis. There's nothing original about sin. It's always a perversion of something that's here, that's originally here. And so we were created righteous. We were created good. And sin enters in however you're going to want to, that whole story. I don't have time for that right now, obviously. But the whole story of Scripture is God insisting that He will save His people. I mean, regardless of the cost that it is to Him or to anything else, God will allow people to drive themselves to hell in a Ferrari going 120 miles an hour, as many as want to, and yet some, in spite of that, in spite of our determined effort to resist Him and to do everything we can to go down that hole, He is still going to save some of us. That's the message of Scripture. And so, which brings me to the second point. At the end, you're calling them narcissistic, serial killer. I forget what the next word was. Exclusionary, and so on. And certainly, if he was if he was a man writ large, if he is the Greek gods, teenagers on steroids, there's just no other way to describe it. Y'all nailed it. But if, on the other hand, His whole purpose is to rescue a people that are determined to rebel against him, determined to resist everything that he has set up that would be beneficial. And in the midst of that, he grabs some, none of which of us deserve it, but he grabs some, and he says, you know, you will not pass. Then instead of being incredibly narcissistic, I think he is worthy of as much praise as we can give him.
Okay, so a couple of things there, and part of it is me not being familiar necessarily with Episcopal theology. So
That's biblical, at least as I understand it. That's biblical. I wouldn't call it particularly Episcopal.
Well, I mean, let's face it. Everyone says their beliefs are biblical, but there's still divergence. I just want to make sure I'm not putting stuff on you that isn't yours.
Right.
But you talk about God kind of magnanimously choosing to save some people in spite of themselves. Do you think that is something that is a irresistible grace kind of thing, where people cannot, those select few could not resist the call of God even if they tried? Or is there still free will where people can choose to go with God, or they're free to choose the other side?
Yeah, I know where you're going with this, and I'd be glad to discuss this. I guess I would first want to ask, do we want to put this on the end of the Job thing, or would this really be a better one to kind of put somewhere else? I'll be glad to go into this. I will say, let me just give you a caveat at the very beginning of this. While I believe, and like you say, you know, yeah, I'm biblical, but you know, these others are not, and all that kind of stuff. There would be a lot of people, even within my communion, the Reformed Episcopalian Church, that would probably cringe a bit if, you know, they know that I'm representing them. So my apologies to all Reformed Episcopalians right now, okay? Let me just state it from my own perspective. I'm not pretending to represent my church in some of these particulars. I will represent my church in saying that we believe that God has come to rescue a people, okay? Now, you're going to go in particulars about predestination and free will, and you're going to go on this stuff. I have how I understand it to work. I understand the Anglican Church to have begun it, and all that kind of stuff. I'll have people within my communion that would disagree with me on that, okay? So, you know, I'll make some of that distinction there. So, we just simply, I don't think, have enough time.
We can keep it kind of high level for the.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to keep it at a high level. So let me just say this, and it sounds like a dodge, and I don't want to make it a dodge. Let's take this up at another time at a deeper level, okay? I'm certainly willing to do that. But let me at least say this. However people come into that favorable relationship with God, whether free will, whether predestination, whether you know, standing on their heads and singing the national anthem at the top of their lungs, however it comes in, God is gracious to at least some people, you know, and how those some get to be the some, whether it's they choose to get in or whatever, you know, you can cut that pie a lot of different ways. But I will say this, that God somehow, in His graciousness, has pulled those people in. I believe, even as I'm going to be on the predestination side, but I fully acknowledge our free will, our decision. We are responsible human beings. If I was to take a knife and to stab you, Jim should tackle me and you know, throw me down and do everything. He would be fully in his rights to do that, because I would be culpable for my actions. Okay, so I mean, but you know, there's just long ways to go on that kind of stuff.
Okay, and just curious, because based on some of our previous filming today, do you think that the Book of Job is a description of actual events from history? Like there was actually a guy
I
who
think
had all this
so.
happen
I
to
think
him?
so. Yeah. I mean, it's other parts of Scripture you talk about. It talks about, well, if Job and Daniel and Ezekiel were here today, no one really questions the existence of Ezekiel and Daniel. In fact, Daniel was alive when that statement was made. Ezekiel may be the other guy. I'm not sure who the third guy is, but the two right there obviously were real people. I think Job's a real person. I don't think we have any trouble saying that. There's and isn't he Job? I mean, isn't this Job is so great because you read it and you think, yeah, this God has done me wrong. He has. This is real stuff. The Bible doesn't whitewash stuff. It poses the question.
I'm always interested by the ending of Job. Looking at it now, outside the faith, it seems like you have this whole book where Job is where there's all these questions being raised about what God is doing to his faithful servant. Why is this happening to him? Why is he being laid low? And then God comes in, and it's the big finale. And in the longest speech he ever gives in the Bible, or his longest monologue, he's basically, who are you to even question me?
That's correct.
That seems like, looking at it from the outside, that seems like God's dodging the question. Almost, he's not answering. He's just saying, "Hey, you shouldn't even be asking this question to begin with."
Okay. Well, there's two things to that, and you're correct. I mean, you could spin it that way if you wished, but I would look at it. I would look at it like this. Number one, if I was to ask I lost my brother. I mean, I really did. He was murdered. And what do I do about that? Do I just say, oh, well, I don't care because God's in control? No, you have questions about that. You wrestle with that. You go and you talk and you say, I'm about to lose my faith because, God hasn't lived up to my expectations. Those are legitimate questions that you ask someone else, okay? Those are perfectly fine. I believe in questions. I can hardly think of a legitimate question that sits on your mind that needs to be answered. I can't think of one that shouldn't be asked. I don't have any time to go into it, but my students, if they ever watch this, you ask any beard questions. Ask me what a beard question is at some point. I'll tell you what a beard question is.
Okay.
You ask a beard question, okay, then you'll get slapped verbally.
Yeah, you're probably right. I was going to get down a whole theological rabbit trail.
Yeah, I don't think that's where Jim wants us to go, or where y'all want us to go at this point.
Going to go on tangents while wearing the same
I'm
clothes.
less of a predestinarian than most naturalists are. Let me put it that way.
Right now, so 5 to 8 more.
Okay.
Although I'm a full predestinarian, but I would be less so than most naturalists.
I consider determinism as the predestination of non-theism.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, wasn't that Nietzsche?
I actually agree
I mean, Nietzsche. You have to. You just have to. Nietzsche was as much of a predestinarian as I am. If not more so.
The supernatural aspects out of it.
Yeah, but more so. I mean, that's the whole thing. He takes the supernatural aspect out, and then we're just matter. We're not responsible for our actions. We can't be, under Nietzsche's thing. That's why it's so important that we have a God that can give us responsibility for our actions. I am culpable. If I was to injure you, unless, I'm not a pacifist, so if you attacked me, I would defend myself with as much violence as necessary. But if I was to attack you unprovoked, I would be culpable for that action. So I believe in all those kind of questions, except for beard questions. I'll explain those later. But if you're truly in the presence of someone who truly is omniscient, truly is omnibenevolent, truly is omnipotent, truly is omnipresent. If you're in someone there, it just seems arrogance for us to go up and say, "What are you doing? Why you have to explain yourself to me now?" I mean, okay, give me one thing. Jim is out running on some kind of patrol, and he gets the orders that says, "You go in this house and you do that," okay? And then and he says, "This is the stupidest thing that these stupid generals and commanders tell us to do." But what does Jim do? He's a man under authority. And so does Jim. He may question, he'll talk about it among his friends, they'll go back and forth. Does Jim go storming into the chief chief of staff of Trump's, generals and say, "You're a bloody so-and-so"? No, he doesn't. He doesn't. He shows respect to the rank. He disagrees with it. He shows respect to the rank. Read the Psalms. Read the Psalms. The Psalms have been an incredible source of comfort to me. God, you have done me wrong. I don't know how many times I've prayed that. And it's just in the Psalms. You just, Psalm 44, Psalm 77, these are God, 88. These are, "God, you have done me wrong." And you can pray those things because God somehow is big enough to handle it. Mm-hmm. But if you're in his physical presence and he's standing there, maybe you ought to just say, "Okay, I know it's a small possibility. I know it's infinitesimally small, but maybe I'm arrogant and maybe I'm wrong."
We have a question.
If it's an unlawful order, though, I'm obliged to not carry it out, like killing an innocent child or unarmed person, and not taking them in custody instead.
Yeah, I was going to bring up a similar question.
That's good.
I feel like the rank may give you reason not to question someone,
right,
but it doesn't necessarily make that person. Making correct doesn't necessarily make them worthy of respect. I'm not sure if I'm phrasing that correctly.
Well, it depends on what you mean by worthy of respect. It makes him, but Jim may disobey it, but he won't go storming in the office of the general and slap him over. He will have to explain himself. He'll have to explain himself respectfully. He'll have to say, "Yes, sir. No, sir, I did not do that." "Why, sir?" "Because, sir, I am," and he'll quote the line and verse that he can't go and kill somebody because of this, that, and the other. But he still shows respect to rank. And why? This is a fallible man that he's showing respect to. This is a fallible human being, and yet he's still showing respect. Why? He's showing respect for rank. This is what we were talking about earlier. You can always have analogies between human and divine, or this human cultic group and this human, respectable religious group. You always have these analogies, and you can always take one and pervert it. I mean, that's what evil is. Evil is always good perverted, and so the twist on this is, again, I just come back to, is it true or is it not? If there is a true God that is truly benevolent, I don't mean kind of, I mean truly benevolent, truly omnipotent, truly omniscient, truly omnipresent, then maybe you don't know everything. Maybe he knows a little bit more than you. Maybe he has a good idea.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. You've got the atheist view, you've got the Christian view, and hopefully you can think about some of these issues. Mark, do you have anything you want to plug while you've got the YouTube platform?
Wow. Jesus Christ was born, he died, he raised on the third day, and he will save you from your sin. Okay, I'm a well, I don't know. I'm not sure doing good to an atheist channel, but I'm a self-employed high school teacher. I teach. You can look me up on worldviewstudies.org, and you can see that. And if some Christian accidentally sees this, bring your child to me. I'll teach them how to do what I'm doing right now. Okay, we teach everything from Homer to the scriptures, from Marx to Smith, from I don't know, from Inferno to City of God to Paradise Lost, where almost Satan is the hero, right? And we teach apologetics, so come.
All right, well, there you go. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.